Hey everyone, I'm Poppy from the channel Poppy Bar, and today I'm going to be sharing with you 4 really easy recipes that you can make to take to university and on the go. So I've come up with 2 breakfast ideas and 2 lunch ideas that are all really easy, really quick. They can be either made quickly in the morning, or what I prefer to do is make them the night before, and they're all super healthy as well. I think it can be so easy to just grab something when you're on campus, but usually they're not great and they're often overpriced. I'm honestly the biggest fan of meal prepping. I love making big dinners and then freezing portions, and at university I think it's so important to have things made in advance. So when you get back from a late lecture you have food in, you don't have to feel like you have to order something. And if you've got an 8 AM lecture, making food the night before not only saves you money if you were to buy it on campus, but also saves you a lot of time, and it means you can sleep in for that extra 10 minutes, which is always great. So my first breakfast idea is my absolute favourite, and that is overnight oats. This was honestly such a staple of mine last year. Anytime I had an early lecture I would make one the night before and then bring it with me, and then usually eat it in the library after my lecture. It's so good, so filling, and it's really quick to make, so even if you forget to make it the night before, you can make it in the morning and grab it, or you can make a big batch because it lasts in the fridge for a few days, so you could make, you know, a couple of days in advance and then you don't even have to think about it the night before. Okay, so to make the overnight oats, I add some normal porridge oats to a jar. Honestly, you can use whatever jar you have. At university I often use a jam jar or an old peanut butter jar, and this recipe is super flexible, so whatever you have on hand you can pretty much put in the jar and add milk. So for this recipe I used oats, cinnamon, I used protein powder, which is obviously optional. I usually always top mine with frozen berries of some sort. Frozen are so much better than fresh because they're a lot cheaper usually, and it means that you don't waste any food. I then top the oats with some non-dairy milk and give that a really good stir before adding my toppings. So usually I always add some sort of fat. In this case it was some almond butter, but peanut butter works great, or a handful of nuts or chia seeds or anything you have in your cupboard. And then I always add something to sweeten mine up as well. So in this case I used jam, but any sort of syrup would work really well as well. The second breakfast recipe is also really versatile, and that is a smoothie. I honestly change these up every time I have them depending on what I have to hand, but I think these are great to take with you because they're very portable. You can just shove them in any sort of travel cup or bottle, and it means you can even like eat your breakfast on the way to uni. You could literally be sipping as you walk, so I just think they're great. I personally would make these on the day just because I don't really like them as much when they've been sat in the fridge overnight, but obviously they're still fine. If you've got housemates that don't have an early lecture, I would recommend doing it the night before so you don't wake everyone up with the blender. But yeah, again, this is super easy and simple. So to make my smoothie I usually always start with a banana. Bananas just add so much creaminess and sweetness, so I always put a banana in first, and then I usually add frozen berries. So in this case it was strawberry and raspberries, so obviously this gives it a nice flavour, but it also makes the smoothie cold, which is great. You could leave it at this point and blend and it would be good to go, but usually I like to add a couple more bits just to make sure I stay fuller for longer, because just fruit can sometimes not fill me up. So I added some chia seeds and also some oats, and then I top it with non-dairy milk, and I just blend it in my little smoothie maker. It was really cheap and is great for university because you blend everything in the cup and then you can just put a lid on it and you're good to go. Okay, so now moving on to the lunch ideas. My first recipe is for a chickpea wrap. This is something that I've only just tried recently, but I think it is going to quickly become a staple for me for lunchtime because it is really filling and really cheap because the main ingredient is chickpeas, and you can get a can of those for about 30p from Aldi, which is great. So to make the filling, I started by mashing the chickpeas in a bowl with a fork just until they were all pretty much mashed, and then I put that to one side. I then chopped up my veggies, so I used some celery and some red onion, chopped them up super fine, and then added them to the chickpea mixture. I then mixed in some vegan mayonnaise along with salt and pepper to taste and a squeeze of lemon juice. This recipe makes enough filling for about 3 sandwiches, so I would recommend storing it in the fridge and then making up each wrap or sandwich the night before, just to make sure that the bread doesn't go too soft. In my wrap I added some cucumber and some lettuce as well as the chickpea filling, and then wrapped that up in foil. It's really nice, it's surprisingly tasty, and the chickpeas are full of protein, so it definitely keeps you full. My final recipe is a pasta recipe. I'm absolutely obsessed with pasta. I could probably have it for every meal of the day. So you could definitely make this for dinner and then save a portion to take for lunch the next day. If not, it's quite quick, so I would recommend maybe making this the night before and storing it in the fridge for the next day. So to make the pasta sauce, I added a little bit of oil to a pan and then some chopped red onion. I then cooked down the onion for a little bit until it was soft before adding my other veggies, which were mushrooms, broccoli and peppers. Again, you can use literally whatever you have in the cupboard. Courgettes would go really good with this, aubergine, pretty much any vegetable. I cooked these for a couple of minutes before adding some passata and then continued cooking that until the vegetables were soft. You can season this however you like, but I use garlic powder, onion powder, basil and some paprika. They're just my personal faves. I like to make it a little bit spicy, so they're the ones I added. Once the vegetables had started to soften, I put some pasta on to boil. I just followed the instructions on the packet and cooked it for about 10 minutes. And during this time, I also cooked some veggie sausages. So I used the Linda McCartney regular veggie sausages, and then I put them in the microwave for a minute. I turned them over, cooked them for another minute, and then a further 30 seconds. This is a great time-saving hack because honestly, if I had to heat up the oven and cook them for 20 minutes, you know, I probably wouldn't bother, but putting them in the microwave is super quick and saves a lot of time. Once the pasta was soft, I drained it and then added it to a Tupperware along with some sauce and the sausages. This is another great filling recipe and it's super easy to make a big batch of this. The sauce can be frozen, so you could always make a huge amount of sauce and freeze portions for later use. Or you could make a big batch enough to last you the week and you could take pasta every day in for lunch, which I often do. So it's another really easy one. So these have been a few healthy recipe ideas for food that you can take with you on the go. I hope you enjoyed and thanks for watching. Bye!